2?
Yeah, let's do.
Let me see if
We're good?
yeah, it's not.
Okay. Give you a moment. Good enough?
Yeah.
Are you good? The ethical process now is the ability for a sense of statistical reality becoming the ethics drive not to wrong truth, but rather the enforced image of thought of the dominant. Thus, the ethics of the event. Thinking about that image to find the true ethic, refusing the tyranny, common sense, to find something new. Spend number 9. All thinkings of positive image of philosophy, interrogation, production, course of thought with that image of testing, not establishing true with the multiplicity of perception, not let any single image govern all others, and ethics of the beneficial thought to open itself. Thinking cannot be presupposed to ultimately restrict the morality, rooted in justifying a dogmatic image of thought, presupposed to define the nature of thought. Definition presupposed what they see to delude, criticize, in terms of their comments, the facts that everybody knows, perpetual illusion, there are more laws, there are only morally established habits, only the most obvious. Universal moral value to be restrictive and erroneous. This represents the psychiatric morality that describes the root cause of moral failure and also embodies the logic of totalitarianism of Figure 13. How to handle the fact that priority 2 strategies, 1 times strategies, the priority 2 postmodern strategy that cultivates priority, absolutizing moral pressure, freedom, list of all the results in the individual, just the absolute value, system, moral relativism, or reason, age of activation of morality with this absolute version of relativism, morality capable of regular life of democratic principles, democratic politics based on priority proof that defining human rights as negative freedoms like a freedom of the greatest social evil, the absolutization of the advance, including more values, even more development, interpreted realization, one can universalize more values, overcome the totalitarianism of human rights, European ethics such as a form of universal freedom, which is priority indicates which just the universal rules is failing, justification, but thinking outside us having only relative validity to cause the real failure, anybody consider moral type because evil is culture to against values, and cannot be justified, even action culture to values, neither be evil is successfully justified, relative is respect for the different rejection of totalization, this purpose will left from morals, wherever the outside of one's command, to take account from moral bad. There are 2 models of the subject that emerge in response to this affective collision. First, melancholy subject. This table says subject present future became projection of the aesthetic past. The demanding subjects conform to majoritarian modes of being. Second, temporality of the new. Time introduces difference. Subjects are always changing and open to alternative modes of being in a way that precedes the past. We must strengthen false ability, melancholy subjectivity, and embrace the tradition of new modes of being. Only subject embraces the temporality of the new can embrace subjectivity as becoming. Job 16. The temporal logic that is introduced to melancholy such a moral obligation affects temporal control over the subject, whether under which subjectivity is reduced to the operation of repetition, which occurs in the environment performed by the mind, which is called the time as well as the subject. The personalization doesn't be faced the wrong relationship between independent and sense of perceived one another, the most form habits of time, future, they are constantly this is the features of benefits with the temporality subordinate by defining time and empty edges. This between I and self time is the difference factor in the I and passivity, time is the most radical form of change, time and the I and the present concerns becoming capable of acting, the digital transition, not present in the temporality of the dead. The losing essence of the moral and ethos encounters where bodies and forces collide, forcing new modes of existence. Ethics of the event is not about duty, but about the power to be effective. The struggle to invent responses as the joy of becoming otherwise. This is the true ethic. Thus the alternative is the race ethics of the event. Number 9. The losing ethics counter relation business of moral and cultural morality instead of concerning walls of the eminent modes existence. And if there's a event that not considered duty or obligation, supposed to virtual force in here situation, ethics persist and power to be effective so far as the just not being presented. There are no principles for local wisdom cannot try to be more for ethical God begins when one reaches the limits of the power to be each encounter for the individual limit is problematic something ethical God to begin to the real experience and infinite and event the novelty raw experience actualize the infinite power kind of expression of the event new thinking false position not lying not with truth or falsity with the horizon for thinking of opening up new ways of seeing existence framework interpretation the formative research fraud realize the core justification of the framework including the framework page do not get links to representations which are individual words or authors that checks explosion anything is arbitrary and prevents accountability for prevalent rhetoric each one has said that weights exhaustion for subordination got the civility which is a prerequisite for fairness to clash 1 debate shapes subjectivity the neurological dynamics and your habits of mind are internalized representation that's also Joe Lang but actually solves it and shifts to the temporality of the new IC 16 part of neurological dynamics and motor coordination the more performance the more repeated the more stable of not exercise no was to ignore modulating schemas for engage yourself in this culture to rise set up program environment develop social research that individual knives with garbage to the most sense and pathological other amount of neurological dynamics with the thing internalized today that the performance of the best husband or better or worse expectations or positive disrobable the children who require her emphasis mind of community further behavior organization those internalized as well as disposition participate the correct those who don't rules negate the judgment educator must be cautious the way the balance reflect the way of subjectivity inserting not really sense rules that govern LD to golden rule engage to direct racialized practices requirement to be 100% certain to act against the manifest exhaustion but forcing you to always err against minorities defend the power of balance should raise on the best behavior 3 norming the main changes over time over the culmination of balance even if individuals want to solve any other standard as caution back and 4 IVI rejectable then is victim blaming enemies change impossible so we have to be 100% to reject practices magnifying exhaustion fairness is compartmentalized 21 Procedure for whether the outcome of the decision was fair, whether the process of error. Gold chesty races can be materially based on accessibility. The myth of fair rules and debates, the totalitarian ideology policing function, the call to preserve fairness of the penal code, the discipline subjects and compliance to preclude the process of becoming close to 22. Procedural fairness not regarded with us, so that's against the liberal form of valid ease and the of attainment under law, the generality of respect for the peace, what with the pre-limited structure of liberal emancipation, penalty, penal code that operates in adverse or non-resolution, one of the only laws of law, measure courts, and individual conforming before it, elsewhere, resolution, operates the performance of the freedom of the law, authority, always already unfair, predisposition, challenge, witness, and the mornings, or the just of all technical laws of previous cause examination, repetition, compulsion, bullshit, self, ideal purity, when there be tautological law, discipline, self, that is undermined, police job market card there. Skill strength is a system of justification, being especially critique part in 20. Denial doesn't start from ignorance, changes, cognition denies higher of educated, high skills, most of the motivated reason human beings, substance with identity group status, and beliefs respond to the ideological worldview, the rationalization, selective assessment, evidence, affective like dislike, response, and perceived and disorder, conscious, factual, substance, affective, motivated thinking, evidence resistant, and favoritism, essential anxiety combined into toxic systems to justify politics. Mark the card there. I was on anything like oh wait, 98% of thinking you're not aware of enormous or unconscious implanted and shaped our family, maintain your beliefs. Independently at this event negates the resolution. One plea working specifically represents the extraction of which precludes the process of becoming to the conclusion of sacrifice zones. Nicole 22. Reason has to play property, so answer motive protection, precondition, accumulation, expectation, development of the wealth, the reason of creation of this world, I don't operate, not exploited by the perpetually folded totality, capital value, predisposed to the quotation, environmental condemnation, sacrifice of the character, sacrifice, neglect of state, raising the notion of innate criminality, percent alongside the kind of result of economic desperation, declaration of crime, to surveillance, policing, and incarceration, following environmental determinism, failed determinate forces of the environmental life, such as customs, human freedom, judicial as good, justifies disclosure, the environmental harms, the infrastructure, codification, multi great accountability, cycle, which is the damage greater by way of time whereby hazardous trade of subject execution of violence. 2. Their presentation to impact towards debate in the death code. Vote negative the deep platform of 1AC, Dark 93. They became a death culture, signal assassination, to try to be part of the game, language powerful, how use of material consequences, language is real implication for how we act. It's imperative we clearly examine our own discourse, we may not be able to change one, but change our community. Conclusion, meta analysis, terms of thesis. 25. Test amendments, hypothesis, entire literature, study, age 25 effects. Other tools, trade off, meta analysis, optimistic peppies, yield and presence estimates, may reflect publication bias. Z curve, pessimistic, now thoroughly valid, P curve, intuitive visual test alongside null. Outperform the uncorrected random effects more precise. Mortality salience is directly correlated to chronic stress and heart failure. Pendle 25. Psychophysical threat. Sugars responsible by electrical system, cortisol, disease, metabolic, cardiovascular, reproduction processes, blood responsibility to diseases, trans responses, contributing risk of versus to these cortisol, awareness of accidents that intensify psychological responses, conditions to signal morality, trigger behavioral responses, chronic early life stress, operation with thoughts, systems develop the immediate adaptive responses that finding such as the concentration and triggers highly sensitive and factive responses are often ways to maximize Josh Grease, making the practice antithetical and fair evaluation. Even if the death ropes are good, the framework and the restricts the meter. Shivers 17. TMT research to look at the mortality and the outcome research examining jurors, receiving attitudes to cognitive processing information for experiments, students recall interpreting evidence more unfavorable for the defendant, reduces the idea of resulting in attack. Mark the last card of that. Difficult search.
Yeah, so what did you not read?
Sure, I can go down. I didn't read. You want me to just send a marked off? Because I marked a lot of cards, so.
Yeah, can you send?
Yeah, sure. You can go ahead and ask more questions while I do that.
The Kalui evidence, can you explain it?
Which one?
The Kalui evidence.
Oh yeah, sure. It says that procedural fairness, or the idea of procedural fairness, is always granted an idea of liberalism or like a liberal framework, i.e. we must always like support the police or like identify ourselves in the state in order to have the idea or conception of fairness in the first place, i.e. it fits with the K because the totalitarian ideology has a policing function, i.e.
So
the entire K,
Like, how is it policing?
because you're policing the strategies that we can make inside a debate, and i.e. like the idea that we must only have this way of debating, which is the entire premise of the critiques, right? Because you enforce an image of thought on the dominant or the way we think of arguments or present them.
Okay, the Barton evidence, can you explain what it says?
Sure. It says that skill strengthens system justification, i.e. the image of thought of the dominant, or i.e. in this case the state, only reinforces bad skills or bad ideas that are eminently false, right? So you can see an example here that a climate change denier is higher if educated. High skills are most susceptible to motivated reasoning, which also leads to in-group favoritism and skew studies.
Anything exempted in the 1C?
Huh?
Anything exempted in the 1C?
Exempted in the 1NC? I don't think so.
Okay. Any reasons to auto-negate absent the,
So
like
auto-negate? Absent the critique?
Absent
No,
the
like, I don't think so. I mean, it depends on what your definition of auto-negates mean, but they all contest the affirmative.
Okay, let's talk about the time link.
Sure.
Can you see what it says?
Sure. So the entire critique is premised upon the fact that temporality allows subjects to embrace subjectivity as becoming, right, or finding their own existence and what it means to exist upon this plane.
Okay.
You stealing time to the idea of plea bargaining and it maximizing incarceration is a space where you're restricted, right? You're constantly surrounded by guards. The totalitarian ideology becomes even more apparent here because it monitors every single thing that you do and creates a control society. That's bad. We say that we give people the freedoms or individual rights, which negates inside the resolution as a fill-in-C apart from the critique, because it's saying that existence is a prior question to ever finding a true ethic. That's the reason we've been debating about ethics for the past 1,700 years and have never found an ethic, because it's always enforced by the image of the dominant, which can never find a true ethic. Thus, we have to find a new mode of existence.
Okay. Let's talk about the second critique. Can you explain it?
It's the death K that says that like you exposing death impacts is harmful to us.
Okay.
Like, just a cross-apply framework from the first
Any
one.
response to the app preamps?
Huh?
The app preamp.
The F preamp of what?
Last West Key.
Roast Mercy? Yeah. Like racism outweighs because it's felt materially.
Was that in the warranty?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you send a Martel?
Yeah, also doing it.
I guess it's.
Oh shoot, I was marking out my read doc. Is it okay if it's on the read doc?
I don't think that works.
Okay, sure. Oh, I'll send it. Sent.
What was that?
Yeah, it's sent.
I'll let you know. What was it say?
Huh?
I see. Alright, I got it. Alright.
You good for me?
Oh no, I was just gonna start.
Oh, okay. good?
Yeah, honestly.
Okay. Order?
Yeah. The order is just 2 at the top, and then the critiques.
Sure. Worst case?
There's only 1 card. There's like 3 or 4.
Oh.
Is it cool if I just send the body email?
Huh?
I'm just gonna send the body email.
Yeah, sure.
Let me know when everyone's good.
I'm good.
So it's just 2 off and then.
Yeah.
One in 3 use competing interpretations on 1 in 3 recently classed offense events for opportunity convention and only fitting models creates best known which solves most reasons considered. Second, RBIs cause intentional abuse of being. You should wait for being fair, which is your pronoun waste because logic determines an argument's validity and infinitely out bias, forcing into an split. Then drop the beta towards theories of working loss, rectify times Q, and prevents good debaters from reading checks and opposites to get violation. And then go for substance first off interpretation. All once the advocates must have an explicitly labeled text and clear explanation of the advocacy's actors, acting, and object, and explanation of competition between the alt and the alternative, and explanation of the alt is valid action clarified. Big L's bad violation and didn't want to ship the alternative is too big. Can't turn the offense for that can be shifted theories quickly in the tutor just makes 1 year thesis which only basis for a strategy. Also need comes analysis who don't know what to ask or don't know how the critique operates. Sex checks fails because it can be shifting judges on flows. Second, about education, revolutionary movement, see specification. Nobody knows what they're fighting for. Everyone disagrees on how to do it. Anything else means a strategy is called the which by one which redefines the alternative. Next off, interpretation negative must specifically satisfy opportunities and the one during the one clarify must explicitly say whether opportunities are conditional, unconditional, or dispositional on the one place and did strategy we just clarify at least entire the one which is 7 for answers. I don't know if I should go for case of ways or read 30 key of fairness since you don't know the AC is conditional and how the entire 6 minutes which is act about. It's also key to inclusion because you debaters less likely to ask about the status of the argument's text or based on incentivized not to tell novices about the status of the counterpoints and then shift after encouraging a strategic area. Go back to the I'll read another standard on the vague alts, real world education relation mismeet. I think that was already read. The framework page proper. The alpha was conceded DPSL rank for corporate crime. And the standard check for fines, internalization, confinement, selling, repeat offenses. They functionally conceded all of our preamps in the 1EC. We get to weigh the case. Anything else unfair because there's an infinite number of unpredictable links, including the 1EC affording a 1 year restart first. Is fairness and ways drop that a link turns accessibility, procedural fairness causes decreased academic efficacy, exhaustion, and cynicism. Altering pronoun also drop fair clause. Additive, not exclusive means the souls of your offense because the representations are tied to the asked consequences. So our interpretation subsumes them while debating political action for dogmatism and argument refinement, which was the fair call Evans job. Now, the critique proper way that we get to weigh the case. Couple new framework arguments first. You should reject any 2-hour framework argument to say breaking and stand back the entire 2-hour. B, debate is a game. Empirical proof by balance, bigger points, and wipe out which prove that F incentives called ethicality. C is double down. Debaters still change blocks on this activity. C is D is the fairness paradox, accessibility. So it's education, it's fair education, and that means you arbitrary hack against him for now. And shows F is that type of solves when type of solves. If you read the ethical equivalent of a surge, G is the pressure on big force negating identity and reason bad, it's worse, it's used in ways process, prerequisite consent. And so we're now drop my it's about rhetoric generally control F for the word debate. That means only got our interpretation always in specificity. And all colleges like school education next to years should all away rules negate. You should be an adjudicator because positive judges and educator as racist judges support own arbitrary. Racist magic of education and turning the critique is also about paradigms on your burden. Golden rules are relevant. Every judge has a different conception of what is educational racist, which must outweigh the norming argument is wrong. Each wins over. Anything else is a form of cruel optimism, which means that movements never go on to the real. The IBI argument is wrong. It's not double down argument. It's just a structural claim about the way the game works, not like a self-identification. Clearly, it's wrong. They concede the Glaswowski evidence, which has a fairness turns a critique barden. Our arguments that skills are necessary to fight the state in the long run, which turns all their arguments. Anything else means the alternative fails. It's a misapplication of skills. And yeah, the link debate, corporate crime disproportionately targets global south, making I can skip materials to time stuff. This is incoherent. Every single person interacts with time, and it's fine to say that time isn't relevant because in the past 1700 years of past suffering, gut weight and probably that's fine. Do both. And apply to lease and get Mari or admit reform within the dominant parameters is better than outright rejection. It's best to refuse to vote app, understand the problem. Losing Atari 80. You have to keep getting off the thing over the obstructions. That's what keeps you respond to zombie reality. Make a shout out. Will part the shout outs taking precautions instead of drawing into the we'll be kids words to have strategies that meticulous relations with the strategy that I concede and finding line and perm become the negative refusing severance is refusing plumbing. The next go to the next critique. The one year didn't get through any of these cards. Drop case means it must that way. Death is ontologically morally bad. It comes before. And returns the critique, Patterson 3. Death is the objective evil. Death ontologically destroys the current existence subject. Death is an evil because it brings to change the structure of the entire entity. We are everything just interferes in the existence and the objective evil is rather of interference with being. Death can be a thought as a ego form of situation which extend to such with your participating goods. Explicitly crossed by framework, they drop all of our preempts in the one C means that it's game over. And it's real and biological. The judge screw argument is relevant because one, that's inevitable. Your interpretation doesn't solve that, but only our app solves. But only our interpretation solves because it pauses the judge, the adjudicator, and then because the arguments crossed by the skills aside means it only talking about changes spills over.
Okay. Second, is it 4 or 5?
4.
4? Okay, got it. Only 4 now. orders the theory shells, then the death K. Let me know when we're good. Yeah, sure. The theory shells. Oh, actually, like, I'll kick out the loose K first, then the theory shells, and then the death K.
Okay.
We're good? We're good? Awesome. Concede the permutation of the loose K is a tested competition. They can't go for it as advocacy. The theory shells. The vague alternative theory shell counter interpretation. Debated with specific cross-sex and explicitly asked counter interpretation. Define the violation. Cross-sex checks. They have no preemptiveness inside the 1 ER. Cross-sex checks because you just ask inside cross-sex for me to respond. They can't make the response. The cross-sex is unverifiable. They don't know if we can actually respond because our counter interpretation demands that we tell the truth and we respond. If explicitly asked inside the cross-sex, they could have just asked inside cross-sex which would solve all their offense, and also the affirmative can interpret the alternative by themselves inside the 1 ER. That's even better for them, which solves all fairness offense because they have a 2-1 speech cue. The 2 and R can only make so much response that the 2 ER can do weighing inside the 2 ER, which is always going to win inside a theory debate between counter interpretations. So you can just interpret the alternative how you want and boot all of our offense. Spec condo, cross-sex show, crossed by both counter interpretation. Crosses also checks for this, and also the affirmative can also interpret the affirmative, and also like you can just ask inside cross-sex. This makes no sense. At worst, drop the argument. One, the turrets. One, drop the argument solid. If it loses something over and over, I'd stop. This is not strategic. 2, they went with the theory debate since they're better theory debated, not because it's a good norm, it says bad norms. 3, potential deterrents and reason to drop it. A, only have jurisdiction to resolve in-round claims. B, not verifiable, so they will be deterrents. Time skew. 1, doesn't justify a law. Straight turning this has skews debate. Since you have the answer, it doesn't mean you win for answering it. 2, self-inflicted. You spend time on the show that could have been spent answering the argument you say is abusive. 3, have to justify drop the argument, spend time answering the interpretation which solves. You prefer drop the debater because you wouldn't give the death penalty to someone who stole a pencil. It's the fact that there's still a substantive education happening for the K debate. You can just engage with the alternative by doing cross-sex checks. Cross-sex checks at worst solves all their offense. It means that you should just prefer to drop the argument. Death K. Vote negative to reject death threats. Subjects remind devastation reflect on their own mortality, increasing heart attacks within the debate phase. 20 years of evidence proves that creates prejudice subjects. Mortality salience is true and there was no response to the actual thesis level claim of the death K. 1 meta-analysis of P curve of 8 to 25 effects covering the entire literature studies is optimistic about mortality salience. Chen answers all F cards. Experiments that draw negative effects were subject to publication bias of suboptimal scientific methods. While experiments best approved to measure mortality salience are more likely to confirm my thesis, they can also cross apply the logic of the image of thought. They have the idea that death is ontologically bad, which is that's what we're taught when we were young. And that means all their studies are skewed. They should prefer mortality salience to recency. Our evidence that covers over 25 years of research to 2025 prefer replication efforts increase over time as original researchers share feedback and scientists discover better methods, optimizing the process. That's Chen. Even if death threats are good, their framework interpretation restricts that debaters from accessing any benefit discussing them. So vote negative, which is Warren concede inside of 1 and C. Flag this every 1 year card that says that death is ontologically bad or biologically bad or is meaningful doesn't account for that. That's a framing argument. We have not said that death impacts are good. We're saying that your presentation of death impacts and said the debate phase is uniquely bad because it causes heart attacks and psychological aggression, mortality, salient, regardless of whether they consciously realize it. So the 2 ER cannot be no subject formation. So their own evidence says otherwise. It says that death is ontologically and biologically bad, which is that we have salience and respond to it. But if death is really ontologically and biologically bad, that only supercharges the link because that means that we are afraid of death inside the debate space because it's ontological, which is a claim they cannot take back, which means that their representation inside the space were able to skew my responses. It's a kill right here. Their evidence also concedes 1 heart failure, mortality salience. It constantly affects chronic early life stress, cardiovascular issues, and high cortisol levels as Bantel, which is a study that was conceded coming out of the 2 should have a very low bar for extensions. All causes. 0 all causes debate is uniquely backwards and incentivized to rush to the largest impacts in an attempt to outweigh. Think of what has proliferated inside the debate space. Inside the debate space, there are arguments like Spark and Animal Wipeout, and we always rush to the biggest extinction impact, which is proven by their own extinction outweighs inside the usual framing page, which means you should uniquely contextualize the length of this round, which means that we were never able to respond to the affirmative substantively, which also turns fairness. We'll concede the fairness paradox, and we'll do it here. Notes, Mortality Salience Transparency for experiments prove legal judges score worse than information processing and negative attitudes when reminded of their own mortality, increasing the chance to make worse decisions as shivers. The answers to paradox. The fair evaluation matters. Vote negative to minimize judge screws from unfair evaluation, but relying on something doesn't prove it outweighs. They also conceded it's compartmentalized, which means that they test the process of the debate, which means that fair fairness impact is minimal because we affect your evaluation of the debate from the death representations, which turns fairness, and also means that we don't need to win subjectivity shift in the first place because the fact that we outweigh unfairness. They make debate harder, they make debate impossible. We can access the benefits of having a fair debate space if we were all dead inside the debate space. Framework. Framework is inseparable from the thesis debate. Debates the unique cause of mortality scientifically motivates debaters to rush for the biggest and worst ending impacts and attempt to outweigh the increase of conscious confrontation with death, triggering this defense mechanism to protect sense of mortality by increasing worldview defense and agricultural predators, which is a thesis level statement that will cross the platform for first off. Our impact comes first. That throws Greenland progressive violence and creating racist debaters, which outweighs fairness and question materiality, which was dropped. They can't go for Glochetski towards accessibility because the fact that we made a 1C level claim that racism can be felt materially, i.e. that I will drop dead on the floor if you have a death link, and you can't respond to that saying it's not verifiable from this round because that wasn't a response made in step 1ER. But also, it means that I was a mortality because of the fact that we have psychological aggression happening in ourselves, and we can't respond to your links, which also outweighs unfairness because if I am undergoing psychological aggression, I'm not able to respond to your impacts or links at best, which means that our accessibility outweighs what is physical, and your fairness is only mental, and also accessibility outweighs being here, so it comes prior to reaping the debate's benefits and flips the direction of the paradox. Vote negative to minimize the fairness. The argument was drop that going off the 1AC. You should buy us. The ballot solves our offense while norming even in individual rounds don't do much. Models to be solved over time. It's the only thing that can explain judges become more susceptible to decay. In the last 40 years, the non-resolutional theory tricks us at LD. Remember, we agree competitive sentence, but they consider we explain it better. Debaters switch arguments that win and avoid ones that lose. Governing matters to change over time. That takes out double down. Actually, we're not going to concede the fairness paradox. It's a even if argument. We outweigh fairness because accessibility kills us internally. I have a... Alright, are you good?
Not great for the theory cells conceded guys. The conceded dropped the argument, the case extending out perception to BS causing echo extinction. The tuner needs to flow. They have dropped like 15 framework arguments. First is that debate is a game. Conceded that our thesis, the debate's intrinsic nature is that debate is a game inherently structured by competitive incentives. Their active want for the ballot concession of CX competitive. The fact that debaters will be spiked by because the ethicality of debate is sculpted by the competitive incentive to win. You can see they need to win 100% risk of spillover, and none of the impacts are relevant because anything else is a form of cruel optimism. Means that movements never spill over because debaters perceive that change is happening in the status quo, so they never go out to pursue it in the real world, which means they need to win spillover, and they have conceded that we get to weigh the case, which means that, listen, this is the framing issue. Even if they're right that it turns, even if they're right that death turns death or whatever, it is relevant because they haven't won a framework. They've dropped like 15 framework arguments, which means that there's no distinction between the actual material consequences of the plan and what happens like if you drop dead. So it's relevant. Second, conceded no new 2-hour framework argument is late breaking and stand back to 2 hours because 6 minutes of 2-hour framework argumentation correct to 3 minutes, and the 2 hours so they can stand back a third is double down. Clean conceded. Even if they're right that talking about death is bad, you conceded that it's worse. You can see that your framework interpretation is worse because it causes debaters to talk about death more because they just reject your thesis claim in the long run, which is clean. Conceded. That means there's zero risk of their offense. Fourth, conceded that tab solves going to tab solves. If we read the ethical equivalent of serve means that none other impacts are relevant. Fifth is oppression Olympics. Your model forces the debaters to negate acts like racism bad under their model that is worse and turns all their burnout and stress arguments. Now extinction away will concede a process, prerequisite, and consent and same right means that even if they're winning an argument about how, that means that we outweigh on magnitude because even if the 1C causes some death, like the judge dying, heart attacks, etc., it is irrelevant because they've conceded that we get to weigh the case and extinction kills everyone, which is process, prerequisite, and consent, and the Zimmer evidence. Oh wait, Zimmer was not read, which means that extinction outweighs. Now the line blind proper, you see that one, it's meta-analysis, and that moral salience causes judge screws. You can see that your model can never, first the judge screws argument, you can see that your model can never solve, and only pausing judge and adjudicator is something that's good because anything else is racist, allows racism basic judge to form their own arbitrary and racist metric of education, which turns subject formation. You say that moral salience causes heart attacks. Basically, functionally, clean conceded Glassowski evidence or argument is that fairness turns burnout and stress because it's empirically linked to decreased civic engagement, and more fairness is linked and less fairness is linked to increased exhaustion and burnout. Means that it turns all their heart attack arguments and only the material consequences of the plan are relevant. You say that it's a question of norming conceded the cruel optimism decide, which means the witch should answer this because they need to win. Their movements spill over and nothing matters. You say that it causes worse judge screws. Consider only responses in the 1 year, which was that your model does not solve. Oh wait, I still have 18 seconds. Yeah. That's fine. So you vote out because the biggest game was conceded. That means that competitive incentives co-op all their impacts. Nothing spills over. Double down means the debaters reject their thesis claim in the wrong one. Extinction outweighs was conceded, which means that they have not won an argument about why judge screws and the material consequence of the plan, why there should be a distinction between that because the causal links of the plan means that framework, we're winning it. And no material framework arguments will show.
You're right.
You're right.